So usually when I want to masturbate, the first thing I do is, okay, but I have to do these 5 chores first. If I just like someone, I just kind of like go up and get them in the crotch, which would not do now. Nobody can objectify a man like I can.
Hi, my name is Bree Mills, and I am a porn director with a purpose. Now, throughout my career, I have covered just about every niche, and I've created some award-winning films and brands along the way. But now, I'm much more interested in getting to know the real people behind my characters. And that's because I believe adult entertainers can be some of the most powerful role models when it comes to sex ed, consent, empowerment, and wellness. By asking the right questions, our community can really help people better understand themselves. So that's the mission of this podcast. Let's get up close. Welcome to the podcast, Penny Barber.
Thank you for having me.
We have talked many times. We've obviously worked together many times, but this is our first time meeting in person, which is like the best way to meet somebody in a podcast interview.
Like, I guess, yeah, let's go. Let's
because we've got like that. It's not like a completely cold call conversation, right? Because we have established a rapport.
Yeah.
But we're going to get deep.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Tell me a fun fact about yourself.
A fun fact about myself. Oh, God. What's fun about me? Usually I just say I do adult media.
Well, it's going to help contextualize a lot of what we're going to discuss today, for sure.
Oh, God, what's a fun fact about me? I don't know. Like, I was a pro wrestler for a while, and I was, like, on my team captain. I fucking wrote a couple of books on age play. I don't know, man.
I think there's a lot we could go in just from that. So, wrestling?
Yeah.
Like, was that something that you did kind of high school, college, that type of thing?
Yeah, I did a little bit when I was younger.
Yeah.
And then I looked directly into the camera. Then I did it more, in adult stuff, and I really did like it. But my back, not so much.
Yeah.
So no more.
No more. But
really
you could throw it down if necessary.
I mean, if you want to come at me, Bree, just be warned.
This is already how the conversation is going to go. Okay, I'm very intimidated, and I am not a good wrestler.
I'm in a dress, but I'll get you.
Yeah, no, I full like I bow down.
Okay,
I immediately back away.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about what was the other thing that you mentioned. You mentioned you've written a couple books on age play.
I have, which normally I don't talk about, but you started it, Bree.
I
did.
I did. Well, we can definitely, like, if we swing back to that in the context of our conversation, we definitely can. But they're 2 fun facts.
Okay.
That's a good. That was definitely satisfying for my first question.
They're like, B plus facts.
Yeah.
They're okay.
No, it's better than the deer in headlights response sometimes get, right? Mm-hmm. So it was fantastic. Huh. Let's talk about. Tell me about a little bit of context into how you became Penny Barber.
Oh, God. I was actually just talking to my husband about this. We've been together for like 12 years. Mm-hmm. But I, started doing adult at 18. So I'd already been doing it for a very long time. And he was like, the longer you've been doing this, there's like less of a line between Penny and you. And, I'm 38 now. So I've been Penny longer than I was, that other person. So how did I get to be Penny Barber? Like, 10 years ago, I feel like everyone was like really into like marketing and branding. That was like, the pre-girl boss thing that we all kind of did. And so it got me really thinking about identity and who Penny Barber was and what that had in common with me. And it just kind of like over the years has solidified into this. I mean, I guess it's a personality, right? I don't know what a therapist would say about it, but
Well, it's interesting when you do end up having, like yourself and then your persona self, especially when they're kind of pretty close to the same. I mean, I feel that in my own life and identity too, for sure. Mm-hmm. If someone calls me by my birth name, unless it's my mother, it feels weird.
Yeah, it's like, why are you doing that?
Yeah. But for some people, it's like there is sort of this how do you separate the persona from the person?
Well, there's also like, well, do I define the persona or do my fans define the persona, or like who defines the persona? Is like my identity something that I craft, or is it something that's conferred upon me by other people? And God, I love looking into that camera. I'm not expecting you to be there.
But the good thing is in the final cut, we'll use about 80% of your take. Oh, okay. So you could just, you could look at me, you could look at the camera, whatever you want to do.
It's a red camera. It's very nice. But yeah, so I don't know how I got to be Penny Barber. I don't know. I just feel so weird in interviews because I want to ask you questions about yourself and be like, how'd you get to be Bree? How did that happen?
Well, I will tell you.
Oh, okay.
If it helps. Spark. So when I first, before I was ever in LA and was actively producing, I worked for an adult company, and I was, just sitting in an office doing office work. And I come from a marketing background. So I had the benefit of marketing a lot of other adult studios and porn stars and stuff like that. So I kind of got this like crash course in the spectrum of pornography because our company at the time didn't have our own, brands, but we managed a lot of other brands. And we had acquired our first brand, and it was sort of, it was a learning experience because it's like, okay, right? You acquire it, you bring it into your, infrastructure, and you run it, and everything just keeps going, right, as normal. And we realized, oh, wait, no, that thing called content production is not just putting out scenes. Like there's a life force in it that's going to make it a success or not. And obviously this product that we had acquired, the original owner who was, the content creator wasn't involved anymore. So it was sort of like a ghost or like a shell of what it was before. And I sort of very naively raised my hand. I was like, well, I'll tackle this new venture called content. And I just kind of went back to marketing 101 basics, where I talked to the audience. You talk to your customers, get to know your customers. But I needed to have a name to talk to them with that wasn't my legal name. And so a colleague of mine was like, well, why don't we just take your name and we're going to short form it? And growing up, my family had always called me Bree or Brina. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm comfortable enough with that. And then Mills is just a variation of my legal last name. So it kind of stuck. But I didn't think about it for more than 5 seconds, and just did it with what I thought was, the goal of having a avatar by which I could talk on message boards and forums and stuff. And, 14 years later, if you call me anything other than Bree Mills, I feel weird. So it's weird how it kind of just grew. And over time, I don't know if you found this in your own experience of like that whole person versus the persona and where do they intersect. I think for the first number of years, Bree Mills was a character. It was a character that was like me, but maybe an exaggerated version.
That's always true. Like if you go to when you go to high school, or if you change schools or something, or start a new job or whatever, you can kind of make yourself.
Yeah, you can pump yourself up or amplify yourself in any direction. And I sort of really struggled, especially like as, the work we were doing got more popular, and as I got a bit more attention, I sort of struggled with like, am I allowed to be this character? Is it different? Am I being disingenuous to the people I work with because I'm this character? I had a lot of existential struggles with that.
Have you read any Byung-Chul Han?
I have not. Should I?
Oh my God. Darling.
Will you send me some links, please?
It's like really deep, but it's like talking about that whole thing about like, the cult of authenticity and like, identity and all this stuff that we're talking about right now. But it's like that thick. So.
Oh, no, I will add that to I have a bookshelf in my bathroom that my whole goal every year is fill it up and read it. So I'm actually collecting my 2024 books. So please send that to me.
I will do that.
Because I struggle with that whole, is it okay for the person to be the persona and the persona to be the person? And I've come to realize, nah, at this point in it, it is me. I am both, and both are me, right? So, but back to you and the origins of how you became you, because that's definitely what people probably want to hear more than me.
I mean, it's a good story. It's a good story.
Yeah. So maybe take us back to what are some of your earliest memories with sexuality, especially as it related to forming your own sexual identity?
People, because I do a lot of kink stuff, and they're like, well, how did you get to be kinky? And I'm just like, that's how I thought people had sex. I didn't know that there was sex where you weren't tying each other up or hitting each other with belts or choking each other. I didn't know. I was like I would think that that was like making out, I guess. But like, where did it all? I mean, so a lot of my earliest fantasies would form from like nightmares that I would have, but that were like interesting.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. I'm almost 40 now. I'm just gonna tell you.
I'm 42, so hit me.
Cool.
Hit me with it.
A lot of my like earlier fantasies were about. I was in a treehouse with Beetlejuice, and he would like tie me up and like do and it was important to me that he was like a monster, you know, kind of a thing. But then there's also a lot of fetishism. Like another thing that I really liked was like I just had this recurring fantasy, just like something I just really liked thinking about was two young ladies in school uniforms. They had to be green, and they had to be sitting on, you know how like in Madeline and all the like old books, like they just have like rows of beds in the girls' rooms. I really eroticized those rows of just like sleeping women. And so they
I'm so fascinated. Please keep going.
They had to be in one of those rooms, and they had to be sitting on the same bed together, painting each other's toenails red. And I was just like, that was very important to me. And that's what I thought sex was. And I was right in a way. But yeah, it got weird. Got weird.
So, and I'm really interested in, so it was the details.
You're a lesbian, right?
Of course.
So do you know what Arastasia is?
Of course.
Oh my God. You're the second person ever who's known
There may be another one here. We'll have to find out.
Might be another one? Okay, I hope so, because that'll be 3, and I can't wait to tell my straight husband. I have all the books.
But is it the details that kind of consumed you from an early age, right? Like setting the scene?
The details and also like the power things were very interesting to me. And objects like fetishism was very important, like a really nice fountain pen. I think is very sexy, which is a strange thing to say, and I understand that. But also I really like it.
Yeah.
You know, like watching a gorgeous woman like put on a pair of nice leather gloves and like, you know, smoke a cigarette or like write something with like, you know, a really nice nib pen or something. It gets me going.
And that from kind of your earliest memories was what you gravitated towards.
Yeah, or like watching like my friend's dad put on a tie, you know, like that was really fun. Or I think for women in tennis whites, you know, like whatever. It's so diverse and it's so weird, and it's all just about like, you know, power dynamics and fetish objects and bondage and pain, and, you know, I'm a masochist and a sadist, and just I don't know.
Was there if I were to ask you if there was a sort of a particular piece of pop culture or film or television or music video reference or some kind of entertainment reference that you
we
can
all
think
liked
back?
Secretary. Remember when that came out?
It's so funny because I just talked about that in my last interview.
Have you seen The Duke of Burgundy?
I have not.
What?
I have not.
You've
but
not
I should.
seen The Duke of Burgundy. You should.
So there's 2 things you need to send me after
yeah.
this.
No, it's another lesbian movie. And
I've never seen it.
No, so it's very different because, you know, a lot of love stories, it's about either the beginning or the end of a relationship. This is just like the middle of their relationship. And there's no men in the movie at all. And it's beautifully shot. Oh my God. If you like film, it's I can't remember the director's name, but he also did something I think called Barbarian Sound Studio, which was okay. But Duke of Burgundy, beautifully shot. I believe they employed a perfumist to be on set. So
also into the details.
Very bougie, yeah. You know, in this gorgeous, like, I don't know, it must have been like an Italian villa, or maybe it was Spanish or something in Europe. And it's just about this, how this young woman is kind of like topping her dom from the bottom, and kind of like the dom kind of like breaks down, and they kind of like rebuild the relationship. And then they just keep going. So it's just like the middle of their relationship, which is very rare. And also that it's a lesbian movie, and also that there's no men, but it's not addressed. It's just like almost like a magical realism.
Okay, well, that's definitely going to go on my
Hope you watch it so I can talk to somebody about it.
I will. I promise you. I promise you. And so do you have like was it Secretary that was sort of one of the first ones that stood out to you?
I'm trying to think. No. Do you know the part in Sleeping Beauty where Maleficent has Philip tied up?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I liked that a lot.
Disney may or may not be aware of the influence on sexuality that Disney movies have had, because the number of responses that I've had that are citing.
Really?
Well, my wife, for example, it was Jasmine being kidnapped by Jafar.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Woo. For me, I liked Ariel because, I mean, Little Mermaid came out when I was maybe about 8 or 9, so I do remember seeing that in theaters. I just, like, she was just so rebellious.
No, Ariel.
Oh.
No, like, I remember that's how I learned, like, kind of what lesbianism was. It's like I was in the car and I was like, I was just thinking about Ariel a lot. And I asked my mom, I was like, why can't girls kiss girls? And she was like, they just can't. You can't do that. And I was like, but we could. Can we go kiss girls right now? You know, just like.
Yeah, Ariel caused some feelings.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Plus, she was just so, like, rebellious against her dad. I don't know. I like that. I like that kind of, like, you know, independent woman.
She's not a
streak.
child.
No, she is not a child anymore. It's true.
but also a little bit she is.
Yeah.
I would not.
True. She was unprepared for a life on the outside world without her voice, but with legs.
Ursula got her.
Yeah, it's true.
She got her.
What do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about female sexuality?
You know, men always say that they understand that women don't come as much from penetration, but they don't act that way. You know, like, if you know this, why are you doing what you're doing? So yeah, I feel like it's all laid out. It's not hard. There's a clits right there, and it's not difficult to stimulate. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they're being willfully obtuse, but I don't know. I don't know if it's a misunderstanding or
just a lack of a follow-up.
Yeah.
Or follow through or whatever.
I don't think it's a misunderstanding at all. Oh, you know what I do think is a misunderstanding? You know how they say that, like, men are more visually stimulated than women? Well, okay, great. Well, if a guy is like 99% visually stimulated and I'm like 92% visually stimulated, I'm still really fucking visually stimulated. You know what I mean? Like, I still like a pretty face. I still like, you know, a nice body and all that stuff. So
yeah. Well, and as you said, it's the details for you, right? It's very much
it's form.
Yeah. Going back to your earliest memories of sort of fetishizing.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
of you know, just like your kind of early discovery of sexuality, even if you didn't know exactly what that was, in terms of just being interested in power dynamics and fetishization and stuff. How did your sexuality kind of evolve over time, especially as you became an adult and you started to be more kind of outward experimenting and stuff? What were some of the big milestones for you in your own sexual identity journey?
A few things. You know, first of all was like actually studying and learning how to do things like rope bondage and pain play safely. So just learning things. And then also actually experimenting with sensation. Like, I don't really hurt myself when I'm masturbating, you know. I guess I could. But you know, like that scene in Secretary where she tries to spank at herself and it's not really the same.
It's not the same vibe.
Yeah, it's not really the same thing. And so, like, actually experimenting with more pain play gave me more pain play fantasies, you know, actually doing it. Because, again, I didn't really do it much on my own. And most of my fantasies, like, someone might be, like, being tied up and dominated, but it wasn't necessarily a focus on pain so much. It was more just, like, yelling and, like, you know, getting them and, you know, maybe slap around a little bit, but just as, like, a power thing, not really as a pain thing. So, yeah, more pain play and more skills, I guess.
How did you go from having, you know, internal fantasies and thoughts to finding outlets? It might seem like a dumb question because I know the answer today is like the internet, right? But yeah, like how does one go from it being in your head to like finding the opportunities to?
Well, I'm sure it will not surprise you to learn I was raised very Christian. So, you know, I'm worried there's like going to be a Christian person listening to this who's going to be pissed. But the way it was for me was just learning that they were not correct about so many other things and clearly did not have my best interests at heart. You know, like I knew I was queer. And I also knew I was like, this is not a fucking problem. You know, I was just like, come on. Like, what are you talking about? So I kind of maybe overcorrected a little bit and was just like, you know, no gods, no masters, you know, do whatever the fuck I want.
Yeah.
It was a very joyfully nihilistic time for me where, you know, I would just, I would never do this now, but you know, if I just like someone, I just kind of like go up and get them in the crotch, which would not do now. But, you know, at the time it worked out really well. I was talking to a male friend recently, and I was like, when did you first know you were attractive? And he's like, well, I'd be at a show or something, and I'd go up to a woman and I'd just start making out with her, and it was fine. But my friend would do that, and it was not okay. So it might have been a little bit of pretty privilege there. But it worked out, I had a lot of partners, and, then I just started doing porn really early, so.
What was your journey into sex work? And what were some of the biggest lessons you learned?
18 and I needed money. Mm-hmm. We had Craigslist, again, would never do this now. I'm so lucky I didn't end up in the back of someone's truck or in a basement somewhere. But yeah, I just kind of started answering ads on Craigslist for photo shoots and things mostly. I've escorted maybe 3 or 4 times. Not for me. Good for anyone else who enjoys it, but not really for me. And I started pro-doming, which I was kind of hit or miss. When I liked it, I really liked it. And when I hated it, I really fucking hated it. And then I kind of, after I became a parent, sort of came back more, doing more mainstream stuff and working in LA more. But I still live up north in San Francisco, which I would love to correct, but I can't move until for another, I think, 6 years. And then I'll be down here. Yeah, I don't know. I started answering Craigslist ads.
No, but I mean, it's everybody has a different
it was
pathway.
Back in 2003, though. It was a long time
Well,
ago.
and there's a lot of stuff. I mean, speaking about things that have been learned, right? I know when I started to produce and direct content, I mean, I remember being on sets and feeling incredibly intimidated to talk to the performers about sex.
Oh.
I could talk to them about acting and character development and all that stuff, but when it came to the sex itself, I felt like, these people know what they're doing. They're pros at it. I'm going to be a buzzkill or annoying or, otherwise distracting if I come in and do check-ins or do all. I was so incredibly naive.
Okay. All right.
But it just came from a pure place of, good intended ignorance. But what I realized is of course, having done this for a long time and sort of seeing in general changes in society, much like how you said, you wouldn't go up to somebody and grab them today. No,
never. I shouldn't have done it then either.
Exactly right. Same thing.
I realized that.
I should have never been intimidated to be a director and go in and make sure everybody's okay during a scene. But I definitely realized over time, you have to
helm the ship. And it's nice when the director's excited about the scene. It's nice to get feedback on your performance and what they want to see.
Definitely. But I realized, that was something that was that I, did in my earliest career that I would never do now, that I learned the importance of how that is the single most important aspect of, being a producer or director, is really helming the ship and making sure that everybody is having a positive experience. But, you kind of need to learn by doing in a way and immersing yourself. And for me, that was, coming into porn, it was probably the first time I had seen as much sex as I had seen.
Oh.
Because I'm I'd had a couple of relationships up at that point. I'm serial monogamous. So it was sort of, the most penises I've ever seen in my life by 5,000.
There's the name of your memoir.
5,000% have been in porn in the wild, So it took me a little while to get over it. But what are some of the big things you've learned as a performer and as a, both an independent content creator and also someone who works for studios?
It's kind of the same thing that I learned when I was okay, so when I first started wrestling, I'm kind of big for a lady, I'm 5'6", I'm 135 pounds. So I'm bigger than a little 5'2", 110-pound girl. And so I was pretty good at it, but then, the women who were actual bodybuilders and stuff, of course they were going to kick my ass. But one of the things I learned was that when the coach or the director or whoever was in charge of the scene would tell you what to do, even if I couldn't do it yet, you still have to try. And I would say it's the same thing with film production. Was for a long time I was really intimidated by gear and and even when I started doing better video, I was intimidated by audio. But then, my husband stepped in. He's like, your audio sucks. We need to do something about it. This is a Sennheiser. Learn how to use it. And so it's just try, for anything. Just try. working out, it was just like, well, you can't, we'll just try, and it just gets so much better. I did like a pull-up for the first time this year ever. Now I can do like, maybe 5 of them, which for me is, I'm very proud of myself.
Well, pull-ups are hard. So that is pretty,
I'm proud of, but I'd never done one before. And now I have like, I'm working on a little mini 6-pack and everything like that. So it's just, try, even if you can't do it. Even if you really can't do it, it's not just that you think you can't, you really can't do it yet, still try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you prioritize your own sort of sexual health and well-being these days?
Do whatever the fuck I want, baby.
And what advice would you give to those who are watching? Because there's such a lack of obviously awareness and importance around those subjects.
It's so individual. I mean, like, know yourself, know what you want. And maybe it isn't out there yet. Like I said, it's very difficult for me to find porn. Mm-hmm. It's very hard. Because it's, I want so many buttons clipped, and I'll usually have like multiple things going so I can see everything that I want all at once. But I don't know. I mean, like, what is a common question that you guys get about, like, what are people having problems with? Like, is there one?
Well, a lot of, definitely a lot of the feedback that we've received, not from within the performer community, but from like the civilian community,
viewers,
especially for female viewers, is just a lack of awareness about one's body.
Have you ever been pregnant?
I have not been physically pregnant myself.
Okay.
No. I do have 2 kids, but
right, but you haven't. Okay, so something that I think is really interesting about being a lady that I think guys get that we don't get. So when I was nursing,
mm-hmm.
When you're turned on, like you'll lactate.
Yeah.
Which got me really thinking, because one time I was just like doing stuff around the house, and I just reached out and grabbed a leather shirt and picked it up just to put it away, and I just started spewing
mm-hmm.
milk. And like, I knew I liked leather, but I didn't know I liked it that much, that like I went into this state of arousal. And I think that when male bodied people with thingies get, people with cocks get excited, they can see it.
Right.
And I think that kind of helps you know what's going on. Like,
it's definitely you're right. It's an indicator that
it's an indicator. And another indicator is, I was talking about, when I'm turned on, the best indicator of my arousal is how hard my clit is. It isn't how wet my vagina is. It's how hard my clitoris is. And I was kind of like talking to other women about that on Twitter. And one of them was just like, I never even thought to check. And I was like, okay, well, you don't have to be more proactive about it. You can just stay the course of course. But I think that like seeing your body's physical responses to things can be very helpful, instead of just like thinking about, well, how do I feel all the time? Then you get more and more in your head, and it can work with arousal to be more and more in your head, but it can also work against it.
Yeah, very, very much. Yeah. And a lot of part of the reason why we created the How Women Orgasm series originally was just because when you actually looked up that question online, like, outside of porn sites, but just in general for education, the responses that would come up, or like the auto search that would be populated, was so depressing. It was like, how do I do it? Is it okay? Like a lot of like the sort of the body shaming, Jesus. A lack of just not feeling comfortable enough with the vagina in particular to like explore your own body. Yeah. Just a lot of that sort of societal shame that has been put on women in particular.
I'm not a big vagina masturbator myself. Yeah. I'm all clit, to be honest.
What's your lay down your masturbation routine.
My routine.
Penny Barber.
I'm going to start at the beginning. So usually when I want to masturbate, the first thing I do is, okay, but I have to do these 5 chores first.
Great. That sounds like a real answer.
Otherwise, I'll just do it all day. So I'll get my stuff done first that I have to do. And actually my masturbation ritual has changed since COVID. So I used to like just jerk off. Like I'd go find some images or something that I liked, look something up. Usually something kind of like fetishy and incesty, or, I do a side-by-side again, because it's hard to get both. There's not a lot of like, oh, mommy's going to wear fishnets.
Right.
There's not a lot of that. So I would do that, and then I would just like lie on my bed, Hitachi magic wand, and do my thing. And then, COVID happened, and my husband's always around the house, and it's, the Hitachi's not quiet. He knows what I'm doing. So now when I masturbate, it's usually like a group activity. Like he'll come into the room and I am less comfortable looking at porn in front of him. Like sometimes I'll still kind of do it, you know, but also I don't want him just like sitting there staring at me while I'm finding something is probably like when I'm actually doing it, that's fine. But it's the looking up process that can be a little bit weird, or if I want to switch halfway through. So now he'll just kind of like lie next to me and like hold me while I do it. Sometimes he'll like play with my breasts or something while I do it, or like play with my nipples, or sometimes he'll like jerk off a little bit, just he's not really trying to come or anything. It's just like, because I like to watch him do it.
Yeah.
And so I'll get my little live sex show out of him. And, you know, it's usually pretty quiet. And then right towards the end, when he can tell it's going to happen, he'll just start saying things like either really fucked up stuff that I'll ask him to say, or he'll just be very encouraging. Like, you know, yeah, come baby, come. And I'm like, all right, you know, don't mind if I do. And yeah, so that's my routine now.
You mentioned loading up a number of images.
Yeah, I do.
How is that the approach you take when you're creating your own content? Like I like where you're like, I'm really interested in this and this and this, but it's so hard to find them together. You know, I have to admit, when I'm making my own content, I do sometimes just do what I want. Mm-hmm. Occasionally, I do just like what I want, and then it doesn't sell. Same, sister. It's okay.
And then I'm like, fine, I'll follow the fucking sales. And so most of the content that I create is based on, you know, my sales and what I see people
are interested in, yeah.
Right, and what sells, you know. I know always kind of I shouldn't be saying this, but it always annoys me a little tiny bit when people go out of their way to tell you what they like. And I'm like, but I can see the sales. I'm like, great that you liked that. And I'm happy. I really am. But no, I'm not going to make any more unless you bankroll it, because it didn't sell. Yeah. So.
Do you think that the sort of this scavenger hunt before every masturbation to find your array of images is actually a really key part of what gets you off?
Is it part of what gets me off? It feels like a chore. I think my husband does that too, actually. He'll talk about it. He doesn't masturbate in front of me very often. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know that he ever has to completion. But I don't know. Like, I get lazy. Sometimes if I find something I'll like leave the tab open for like a week.
Do you have a folder of the?
I mean, I'm lazy. I don't have a folder.
That's going to make things more efficient for future masturbation.
I know. I used to do it. There's so much stuff to organize. Like, first I got to get the house in order.
No, listen, I preach into the choir in that respect for sure.
Get that stuff done, then we can organize the porn.
That's right. Okay, good. So that we'll also add that to our to-do list. What you mentioned that it's very hard to find porn. What is the content that you most enjoy creating? Like, what's your kind of dream scene that is able to be created and distributed?
The problem is that a lot of the stuff that I like, you can't shoot it, you know, because it's like, oh, it's got pee in it, or oh, they say mommy, which I'm just like, I think is so fucking stupid. I mean, like my scene that I think I did for you with like Coco, I'm obviously not her mother, you know, like clearly, like.
We clarified it multiple times in the dialogue.
I understand. I do understand. But I just like, and it's not even really about that for me. I'm not really an incest fetishist. I'm more of an incest role play fetishist. Mm-hmm. Like, it is very important to me that it's fake, you know. But I can tell that it's fake. I don't need you to say step mommy or swap mom or whatever they're saying now. So yeah, I'll try to find something that I like. Usually I just go for stills because I don't necessarily like what they're saying, and I have to come up with my own crazy, or I'll like watch porn with the sound off, which I think a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. Occasionally I'll find like a single POV girl that I really like, and her stuff I'll watch with the sound on. Like, if they're talking to me, I like that a lot more than if they're talking to each other. I'm sorry, I'm so picky.
No, I love it. Listen, when I had one of the first questions I asked you, apart from finding out that you were a wrestler and have written several books, and have some great stuff to recommend to me, is the fact that, you know, your earliest memories are like really about the details, right? It seems that that definitely is underlying narrative throughout a lot
of
fetishist
sexuality. Yeah, like you need things to be a certain way. Like the girl can't just be wearing glasses. They have to be like, you know, wire rimmed glasses, or you know, she can't just be wearing stockings. They have to be like, you know, Cuban heel coffee stockings. It's very specific. Yeah. And it's very difficult to hit all those beats. So it's easier for me personally if I just have a lot of stuff going. But then sometimes something is really cool, like there's definitely parts of Duke of Burgundy that have if they were a VHS tape, they'd be worn out by now.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Good to know. I'm going to watch that and then see like what kind of dream scene we can create from that. I'll try to guess what your favorite moments are and piece them together into like
you're gonna know
a mega scenario.
Oh, you're going to know.
It'll be a creative endeavor.
One of the reviews I think I read for it was like, it's the most romantic movie where a woman forcibly urinates in her lover's mouth that you will ever see.
Okay, good. Spoiler alert.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, right. Sorry.
No, but it's okay. But I'm sure that I would have guessed. I would have guessed.
It happens pretty quickly. Yes.
I have had to text Penny a few times before about P-Play stuff, and I've just been grateful that your responses were positive. So if you were a sex ed teacher for a day.
Ooh.
Okay, so you've got one day to teach the world.
Okay.
What lessons would you teach?
It's a lot of power.
It is, and we like power dynamics.
You know what I would teach, actually? Objectification of men. Oh, fuck yeah.
Let's hear the curriculum.
Curriculum. So little setup story. First of all, nobody can objectify a man like I can.
That is a challenge for anybody who wants to.
When I first took up with my husband, we were talking about street harassment, and he was a young, stupid boy. So he said some stupid things. Like he was like, "Oh, I don't really know. It's not that bad. What are you talking about? Like, objectification is not a big deal. One woman yelled at me one time and I liked it, And I was like, okay. And so we were having grown-up cuddle. We were having sex. And I was just like, you're so handsome. Like, oh, like your fucking muscles. Like, look at me, your eyes. Oh, baby. And I'm going on and on and on about it, which, sounds good at first. And then eventually he was like, just stop. And I was like, oh, I know that face. Are you feeling objectified? And he was like, no, it's just, it feels like it doesn't matter that it's me. And I'm like, well, that's what that means. Stupid. And I think that would probably help women a lot too, is if they just, allowed themselves to enjoy their partners, especially their male partners. Because, as a woman, like I know what it feels like to be objectified. Mm-hmm. I get it. And I think that it kind of like closes that gap a little bit. I'm being very like gender binary right now. I'm sorry. But, I don't really see this happening so much in my queer relationships. Mm-hmm. It's not really an issue. So yeah, just objectifying men, just like going them over top to bottom. And I think that when a cis guy knows that you're really looking at him, I think that they try harder, because it feels like, first of all, you care. And second of all, they're embarrassed when they fall short.
Right.
And then it's better for you anyway. One of my pet peeves in the industry is not a lot of the male talent take care of their feet. And I like nice feet, which is partly why I like Nathan Bronson so much, is that he takes care of his feet.
He's got some good feet. He's a handsome guy from tip to tail, for sure.
He is. But, he's very well groomed, and that includes his nails. And a lot of male talent, that's a blind spot for them, is their feet and their nails in general.
Yeah.
So
by letting them know, then they're going to be more aware.
Just letting them know your foot's going in my mouth. Ooh, it's ugly. You're like, what did you do? Then they're going to be embarrassed. And next time, maybe those nails will be trimmed properly.
There you go. This is a good segue into my next question, which is what are some of the qualities that you find the most attractive, and what are some of the biggest red flags, or the qualities you find the least attractive?
Biggest red flags. The biggest red flags are when people don't think through how to make things happen, because like we all have fantasies, but they'll just like pitch something and I'll be like, great, how are we going to do that? And they expect you to do it for them, or they don't know, and it just falls apart right there. So people who don't really think things through is definitely a big red flag for me. As for what's attractive, I'm a very shallow person, very shallow. So I really like pretty eyes with really long eyelashes. I'm also super hypocritical. I have like the most lesbian-y nails ever. But, I like when women have polish on their nails. I really like a French manicure. I like high thumbs. I like mommy all the way, jewelry, dresses, heels. I like when a woman lets me call her mommy, or if she's going to call me mommy, that's pretty great too. I'm happy either way. Boys, what do I like on guys? I actually really like facial hair. For me, the taboo dynamic isn't really about age. You know, like actually that scene, this just keeps coming up today. That scene with Coco, you know, Seth knows what I like. And so in between takes or just like discreetly, he was like putting his mouth next to my ear and going like, hey, mommy, you know, because he knows I like that. Even though Seth is not like a little twink or something. Like he's a grown guy.
Yeah.
But it's still really dirty to me to hear him say that. I like to watch like people do inappropriate things, like really, really busty women, like sucking their thumb, which is not something they would normally do. Because it just, to me, it just looks like, oh, she is just doing that for sex. Like, I'm sorry, I can talk for like an hour. I'm so sorry. I'm just like
just taking notes over here.
It's like I'm like, you know, she's either gonna like be into it or she's gonna start crying. I will.
No, like this is all wonderful. Like I said, I was really looking forward to having a chance to have you know beyond just text conversations with you. So this is amazing. How do you approach consent within your relationships? Obviously, consent's a huge thing within our professional world.
How do I approach consent within my relationships? You know, I haven't really had a lot of problems with it. I don't feel like consent is difficult. And when people act like it's really difficult, I'm like, are you okay? You know, like what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Because like I did like, you know, when I was younger, but you know, it was the culture I had lived in. And it wasn't that I didn't understand. It was just that, you know, the standards weren't there. And it wasn't like expected of me. I didn't expect it of myself. And now I'm like horrified, like, why would you do that? And thank God I don't think I hurt anybody. But it's real easy to just ask somebody, you know, and it's hot too, because it's just more dirty talk. Like if you go up to someone, you're like, oh, can I kiss you? Or like, oh, you're so beautiful. Can I touch you or something? It's, you know, we make this big deal about like consent is sexy, and it's kind of comes off as a little twee sometimes, but it is. You know, it's like if someone's like really into it and they're really wanting and they're horny and, you know, they're expressing that. And yeah, and as for when something doesn't go well, I've never had trouble making it known to a partner that I don't want something. And I don't know if you do have trouble, making it known to a partner that you don't want something, I'd say it's more an issue with the partner than with the person doing the communicating.
Yeah.
Usually.
Well, and one of the things I think we can do, and obviously, you know, within adult content, we're not. It's kind of like saying if you watch Fast and the Furious, that's how you learn how to drive. It's not the same thing, right? So like porn is not meant to be.
No, that's how I learned how to drive.
Is that how you learned how to drive? Good. I'll remember that as well. No, but it's obviously it's entertainment, but we'll be real that this is, you know, what most people look to or turn to model themselves.
Yeah.
And one of the things I find kind of interesting is, you know, when I was a teenager and when I was growing up, at that point, it was just before the internet, right? So just at the early days of the internet. So as you mentioned, it you could kind of access what you could access. And for me, porn was something that you found like in your brother's, you know, under his mattress, or
it was my uncle. But
when you could turn 18 and go to the video store and rent something as a joke or whatever.
Yeah,
so like
as a joke.
The process, like porn was still, I don't know, it was a very far away thing. But now, obviously, people growing up, it's everywhere. Yeah. And you know, I'll often ask younger performers, you know, what was your inspiration to get into the industry? And they'll be like, man, Riley Reid, she's a celebrity. And, you know, and a lot of people that'll talk about, you know, the era of Pornhub kids that grew up where it's just like, it's one of the biggest sites on the internet and people go to it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that because we have such an influence over culture, regardless of whether we intend to or not, or we're only intending to influence a portion of that culture, there's probably still a lot of stuff that we can do within our content that just models something that is it's going to give a cue. Oh, maybe I should talk. Yeah, I try to do that a lot with an Adult Times content where like, let's not make it a PSA, but just talk to the person in the lead up of the scene.
It adds verisimilitude to the scene as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
You can.
So like, remember how you mentioned like how we don't learn how to drive from watching The Fast and the Furious?
Yeah.
Like, is there anything else that you feel like we do kind of learn from films and stuff? Like, because I'm sitting here trying to think of one. And it does seem to be like a special spot for porn where people maybe think it's more of a documentary than it is, or
people look to media for representation. Whether you do it consciously or not, what you see, what is put in front of you, especially growing up, is where you take a lot of influence. It's not where you take all your influence. You have your friends, you have your family, you have your social, economic upbringing, if you're religious, if you're not religious, all of those factors. But you are heavily influenced by just what you read, what you watch, what you consume.
Yeah.
And it's a signal as to what the standards are. So growing up gay, okay, I part of my struggle, I was never confused about my sexuality. It was from a very early age. I knew who I liked, but it was represented nowhere. And I looked at all those teen shows and I wanted to take the girl to the prom and I wanted to give her the letter jacket and all that bullshit that like were fed as being the standard.
Yeah.
And I struggled for a long time because I knew I would never be that guy, but I wanted that girl. So I at that, especially at that point,
you were still learning from the media. Like it didn't apply in the same way, but you were still
what I was learning was
it.
that I was nowhere in there. And so a lot of my own, sort of gender dysmorphia growing up, I realized later on, it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to be in my own body, but I didn't see myself anywhere. But I saw what I wanted to be in what was represented.
Cultural archetypes for you
so exactly.
to form you.
And we get so much influence from, especially outside of our, our families or our immediate circles, a lot of the influence we get is from what we consume. And, for me growing up, that was, film, television, music. Nowadays, you have people with like the Wild West of the internet added to that.
Yeah.
So, and there's no sex education. There's no consistent sex education. You're completely dependent on what your family or your friends may or may not tell you.
Yeah.
So, but everybody's going to be curious. So by the time you can type sex into the computer, you're going to see, what is available, which is a plethora of entertainment.
I guess that's a good point. Like we are learning things like, I know this is like tangential to what you're saying about like style and stuff, but whatever. Okay. But I think I see your point.
Yeah. So I think it's just important that we can infuse, just be conscious of the influence that we have. And that doesn't mean we can't have fun and be entertainment and that entertainment isn't a spectrum of things, but just being conscious of the fact that those who watch, regardless of age or experience, there is an influence there. So we can hold some accountability for that, some responsibility for that.
All right.
This has clearly got to be the first of many conversations, Penny, because like we could go on and on and on. But thank you
for the next 2.5 minutes.
But thank you so much for not just being part of this, but all the great work you do with Adult Time, for being part of the Up Close brand. I know that you shot a couple of episodes with us so far for that, for just being amazing and being so open and sharing all the details from the tying of the ties to the, the nails to all those things.
You're like, what gets you off?
Yeah, what gets you off all the details.
Everything.
So I will work very hard over the next year. I promise to try to compile some of those into a mega dream scene that we can legally
You're going to work
distribute.
so hard and you're going to be like, why is it not a Mont Blanc fountain pen? Why is it a Waterman?
I'll make sure to definitely get your approval on all the details.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.
Nice to see you.
Bye. Okay, I just finished having the coolest conversation with Penny Barber. Thank you so much for tuning into it. I don't even know where to start on my highlight reel. I think the fact that her earliest fantasies stem from her nightmares, and then just like all of her fascination with the details of things, that really blew my mind. Incredible conversation. I would highly encourage you go get to know Penny even more. All of her links are listed below in the episode description. And of course, we appreciate your support. You can do that by liking, by subscribing, by leaving a comment, letting us know who you want us to interview next and what kind of questions you want us to ask. That's the whole spirit of Get Up Close, is really just to get to know the people we work with better. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.